Today, my guest is Teemu Arina, professional biohacker, health span expert, and AI artist. In this episode, we explore the unhealthy side of a high-performing lifestyle.
There's this kind of high-performance culture, which is not a very healthy high-performance culture. So people who are interested in optimal performance, they tend to burn candle from both ends, and that leads to health issues at some point in their lives.
The beauty of stress.
Ideally, you get like moderate amounts of stress all the time, and that leads to positive adaptations. Even like the work that you do with deadlines and occasional sleep deprivation is preparing you for moments where you need to be resilient.
And we explore your shadow side.
It's not about suppressing or trying to eliminate it, but like to recognize it and see, those things about yourself that you are afraid to look at. Because in the end, when you go in there, there's like absolutely nothing to be afraid of.
Can you tell my audience and myself who you are and what you do?
I've kind of like reinvented my career several times. There is some undercurrents in it, but in all of them, I would say like future learning or the use of social technologies in business or biohacking using technology to optimize yourself. Like in all of them, I saw something that is coming that no one else was like aware yet. Like when I started in the field of learning, e-learning was not a big thing yet. Same with social media. I was first users on platforms like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, or X nowadays. And so when I learned about these things, I started teaching others about it. And I did the same with biohacking as well. So through my own health challenges, which I fixed through biohacking, I then started like writing about it, sharing, speaking, organizing events. So suddenly like we have one of the biggest conferences in Europe and one of the most iconic books. Like the question is like, why do I do these things? Like, why can't I just be, fine?
Normal?
Why do you need to be, world's best at something? And for me, it never was about being best. It just was that I felt like I saw like that things can be done much better, and I was never happy what I saw. And even like to understand that aspect was also in the way I was like running my own things. Like there was always room for improvement. A lot of people, they're just happy about, good enough, status quo, right? So they love routines that they don't need to change. They like safety. So there's safety in structures, right? So I keep on innovating and changing things. Why do I change things constantly? Like, why is everything like a fluid thing? Maybe that's like a question I have to ask myself. But the whole point of this conversation is that investigating the psychology of what drives you might help you to actually do that better. So understanding where do certain behaviors come from, or patterns of behavior. And often it comes from childhood, often it comes from interpersonal relationships, and we develop different coping mechanisms also to deal with interpersonal things and situations. I can say that because I became quite independent at the age of 16, I moved out from my childhood home when I was 17. I was basically earning my own money already when I was 13. I was doing all kinds of computer stuff at that time. So I became quite independent early on. And in my family, I became kind of like almost like a father figure for my mother and my brother. So they replaced my father with me, in a sense. They trusted me with like all kinds of things. And later on, I realized that that was also happening in my working life and also in my relationships. So people who needed a father figure, someone to take care of them or tell what to do, like, someone they can trust, they kind of like started like like finding me in a sense to work with them. And because I had this deep responsibility of doing things, it would be me who is the last one who is like closing the lights in a sense. So I started doing things for other people. And so it was not enough that I was like perfecting my own like working life or something like this. I hired a team and I helped them, you know, in the same way to become better. And it was like the responsibility that comes with that led to stress and burnout in my case, like the overwhelm of not just carrying my own problems, but other people's problems. Oh, when I realized this, what I started doing was not to take other people's problems to be solved. I started like, instead of telling them immediately how to fix this or like fixing it for them, what I usually did, I started asking questions like, how would you fix this? Like, even though I know the answer, the moment when I take your problem as my problem to solve, they get used to it also that you are solving things for them. So like I changed my style of communication to more like, you know, having some more patience, like maybe some things like building a business takes a little bit longer, but at least the people take responsibility. And in the end, you don't become the bottleneck, because in the end, if you are a micromanager and a perfectionist, like you become the bottleneck eventually. And a good leader is always someone who is able to make themselves completely unnecessary. Like your role as a leader of anything is not to be the bottleneck. Your role is to make yourself not needed, meaning you are learn to delegate, you create like things that scale beyond you. And that's kind of like what I've been doing, you know, recently. So it's this awareness and investigating your behaviors and understanding that maybe it's something subconscious that you don't even see your own problems. What is creating your problems might be you. Most likely it is you. Like you make your own reality in a way, and you actually create your own problems as well. So if you are this person who has a lot of stress and is not sleeping enough and not, you know, like all of that, maybe you are the problem. The way you run things and you relate to things. And so whatever led to my, you know, health problems in the first place and stress of not getting enough rest or not sleeping enough, nowadays I still have that. You know, I can also like work late nights, but I prioritize rest and recovery. And that's where my daily routines come in place, in a sense that I can maybe, if we share a little bit of biohacking. So a lot of people, when they wake up, the first thing they do is like the alarm bell rings, like they get a cup of coffee and they run to work and they go immediately like, you know, go, 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 go. Like they just like start executing things like from the moment when they wake up until they are exhausted. And then they do something, you know, they maybe go to the gym, which is often another, you know, round of performance driven stuff. Or maybe they, you know, that's when they have a break. But for me, I changed that by starting my day nowadays more slow. Like my morning routines is that I don't have meetings until midday. So I don't have meetings. I don't have calls. I don't have anything. Like I don't need to go out of the door to drive to a workplace. None of it. What I do when I wake up is I do all the maintenance that I need to run this biological computer. So I start my day off with some like I would say, like I go every single day. I go to sauna and I do an infrared sauna in the morning.
Tell me about the saunas, because obviously you're there in Finland, in sauna country, and I've heard a lot about how there is a lot of benefit for taking regular saunas in terms of our body and regeneration.
Yeah. Let's give a little brief. So yeah, sauna is a big part of our culture. So heat alteration in general, steam bathing has been part of European culture for a long time. it basically the Greek gladiators were using, steam bathing, and it was actually very popular everywhere in Europe. But then in the Middle Ages, it was associated with filthiness for some reason. So the church banned sweat bathing as a pagan thing to do. Part of the reason was because there was all these like pathogenic things going around, like plague and stuff like this, and people didn't know. They didn't have microscopes, so they didn't know what is it, where is it coming from. So they couldn't recognize what's happening. So they had all kinds of superstitions. What's going on? Why are people getting sick? Why are people dying? So they thought that actually, like, maybe it's in the water. So they didn't shower. So they would go for weeks without showering. And maybe it's, sweating. So it's in the sweat somehow. So they stopped sweating. So like sweat bathing was banned. And it was like associated with paganism, and like, it was not pure for some reason. It's kind of like, now that we think about it, was like completely insane. But this is how middle-aged people thought. So, but I live in Finland, and that's where the sauna culture survived. This was like far from Vatican, it was far from the centers of control.
I heard somewhere that obviously the suicide rate in Finland is very high. I think it's one of the highest in Europe. But having the sauna could really help in terms of your mood as well.
Let's talk about the health effects. So yes, we have high suicide rates, but that's more associated to lack of sunlight.
Yes,
it's more in the northern hemisphere. So the seasonal depression is a known thing. We also have pretty high levels of alcohol abuse. We are also, by the way, one of the biggest coffee drinkers in the world as well. Probably the poorest quality coffee. And the British get the crown of the poorest quality tea. But that's just my opinion.
Which is quite saying something, considering we're the tea nation.
Yeah. Why do you mix milk and sugar in tea? I don't get it. But anyway,
I love it. Obviously, I'm English.
We do the same with coffee. So like but anyway, like back to the topic. So, but we score the highest in happiness. We have the highest suicide rates, but we score highest in every year in international different like rankings. We score highest in happiness. Yeah, I mean, it's a welfare society, so we have free education, free healthcare. So that's one thing. Everything works. Very low level of corruption. So there's another form of safety that creates happiness for people. But getting into sauna, so Finnish people, they go to sauna several times a week. It's a communal thing. It's a cultural thing. And what sauna does, if you don't exercise at all, if you go to sauna 2 or 3 times a week, it has the same effects like doing exercise regularly, cardiovascularly, hormonally, and on the nervous system. So sauna can be described as an exercise mimetic. So it mimics the effects of exercise. So it's like moderate exercise. It expands capillaries. It improves the cardiovascular system, so your heart rate goes up. It actually, because of the way how thermoregulation works, it also expands your microveins, so you're less likely to get strokes. It's very good. And one thing that is interesting is, as you age, people who go to sauna regularly, they are also they show smaller rates of cognitive decline. So some of the smartest people of elderly I know are the ones who go regularly to sauna. Like you can be in your 80s, 90s, but you're like super sharp still because you have that thing. Like even if your joints don't work very well, like maybe you have like biomechanical problems, if you go to sauna regularly, you can maintain good health. just from a physiological standpoint by doing this on a regular basis. Because of a moderate exercise, in a sense, it also needs time for recovery. So if you do it every day, some people do like me, but you already get most of the benefits from just doing it like 3-4 times a week. Also, the duration matters. Like you need to be in the sauna long enough that your heart rate goes up, and so it needs to be a bit stressful for it to have its effects. But you shouldn't do it for too long, or otherwise, yeah, I mean, it's you don't get that much benefits for overdoing it, like dehydration, even heat shock. Things like this can be a problem. But Finnish people also combine that with ice swimming. So we have 10,000 lakes, you know, and because we have thousands of lakes, everyone has a summer cottage with a sauna and a lake. Like that's our national sport in the summer, and also in the winter for some. So the combination of heat alteration with hot and cold, what the cold does, it boosts your immune system. So you're less likely to get sick. By the way, also sauna does that. So it increases the production of white blood cells. So it's kind of a preventive thing, because when you stimulate your system in that way, the body produces more immune system cells. When it actually does meet a pathogen, it's more ready to fight. So it's like it's easier for the immune system to do its job. Of course, you need to get vitamin D, which we lack from sunlight. But if you do that, like you're pretty well off by just doing enough sunshine and heat alteration, both hot and cold.
If you were to take that to say, here we are in the UK, where unfortunately we don't have summer houses and there are lakes, but they're not always close to where you are in the city. Is a cold, I mean, I do cold showers instead, and I try and stand under as long as I can in a cold shower. Is that a sort of similar thing? Does that do the same thing as swimming?
The temperature is a good question. Like when I was in the summer in London, the tap water is not cold enough, not at all. Like it's lukewarm. Like if you call that a cold shower, it's not a cold shower, man. So like you actually need to have like cold shower. Running water, of course, like you can get away with higher temperature, but ideally it's like 5 to 6 degrees Celsius. Like if it's runny, maybe 10 to 12 is fine. But ideally it's cold for the maximum effect to be had. But you can do the same with swimming in the ocean. Like water conducts heat, and doing things like just swimming in the ocean is probably a really good, like just do it long enough so your core temperature drops. What that does is like both heat and cold increases something called it was first discovered, these heat shock proteins, by exposing cells to heat, but then they realized similar repair mechanisms like what these heat shock proteins are attributed to also gets produced when your cell is being exposed to cold, or when it's exposed to radiation, actually. So there is like different environmental factors that stimulate the cell from the outside to activate pathways and these certain proteins to keep the integrity of the cell. So repair damage, clean up damage in intracellularly, and activate pathways related to longevity. So this response from the cells acutely to deal with this stressor is what actually builds resilience. So resilience, in a physical sense, is hard to kill. So you become harder to kill by exposing yourself to the extremities. So most people in modern world, they live in a tightly controlled temperature. Let's say it's like from 22 degrees to 26 indoors, usually in supermarkets, in shopping malls, in cars, in their homes. Like you have a radiator going on all the time, or a heater. And so you don't get exposed to extreme temperature fluctuations, which our ancestors were living with all the time. So this heat alteration is key for triggering the pathways and the genetic mechanism, the epigenetics for the organism to become more resilient to stress. And stress adaptation is what, just from an evolutionary standpoint, has been key for the survival of our species. So just in a few generations of like having it too easy, easy access to electricity, easy access to food, never fasting. So if I give you examples of stressors, like heat is one, and heat alteration, but it could be as well things like access to food and calories. So you would go periods of time without food is also another like beneficial mechanism. But if you have constant access to food, you're more likely to develop metabolic disease. So many of the things that biohackers do is actually to imitate imitate our ancestors to a certain degree. Maybe the paleo diet is like one of those, or paleo lifestyle, or rewilding. People do stuff that our ancestors did intuitively because they know they knew something we don't. And it turns out that a lot of the biohacking stuff, which is like stressing the organism a little bit, exercise even is stressing the organism, right? So there's positive adaptations that come from pushing the limits of this biological organism with different means. And the beauty about stress is that it's paradoxical. Like stress is a negative word. Yes, you can burn out, but in moderate amounts, it's beneficial. It's called eustress in scientific literature. So distress is kind of like stress that is excess, and eustress is the beneficial stress. And ideally, you get like moderate amounts of stress all the time, and that leads to positive adaptations. Even like the work that you do with deadlines and occasional sleep deprivation is preparing you for moments where you need to be resilient. So yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say, we talked at the beginning of our conversation about the biohackers, and I'm going to say in the US that are all about speed, working more productive, being smarter, and it's all speed, fast, and this response that's very, very extreme and doesn't take back the relaxation, as you were saying, that you need to step back and relax.
Yeah, if you want to optimize exercise or whatever, learning, or you want to maximize your immune system function, it's not more. It's like, I know people have burned out from doing too many ice baths. Like you can exercise too much without seeing the results because you don't have time for recovery. So anyone who learns it the hard way learns that it's important to also take a rest. And that's where biohacking is also key. Like, so biohackers have discovered mechanisms and tools through which they can amplify or optimize recovery as well. So it could be anything from supplements to certain therapies, like using red light therapy, or like my colleague was just having some vibrational therapy. So to stimulate the lymphatic system. So we use science to understand that, hey, there's benefits for certain things, like that sleep is not just 7 or 8 hours of sleep, but you can actually optimize things like deep sleep or REM sleep duration, which is beneficial for physical and mental recovery. Now, in a sense, like, you can like work your life around through different techniques and tools and mechanisms consciously that help you to bounce back faster. And it's the same for your work that you do. Like Tim Ferriss, who is kind of one of the voices also in this whole personal development industry and biohacking as well, with his original works of 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Work Week, for our chef, all of them had the message of like less is more. Like you don't need to work 80 hours a week. You can do the same work in 8 hours. Like the discovery of the process of how you do it, the same amount of things with less energy consumption is the key, also in a sense to add a little bit more on your plate. And I guess that's kind of the better, faster, stronger culture. But the problem with, I guess, with Tim Ferriss and many others are that they don't really walk the talk. Like this dude is not working 4 hours a week. He's working like all the time, right?
Having come from a lot of the personal development world and having done Tony Robbins and various other different things, you see people that, you know, that they talk and they talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk.
Yeah, they use these techniques. These are powerful techniques, but they use these to squeeze more out of the lemon. And then the question is like, how much more space do you have? Like how much like flexibility your organism has? Like if you're already at the max, and you're like figuring out all the tips and tricks, like how to get even more out of it. And this is what leads people to biohacking. So they have fatigue, you know, they have brain fog, they have concentration problems. They seek out these people to and authorities in this field to get more. And it helps in the short term, but in the long term, you have like maybe even less flexibility in a sense.
Aren't we missing the power of our bodies themselves with how we're born and our mind and what our mind can do? And it would be interesting to hear your thoughts on your belief on what our mind can do to ourselves.
Yeah, so our next book after the Biohacker's Handbook, which is all about optimizing all the different systems with like proven techniques and technologies and supplements and whatnot. The new book is called The Resilient Being. So it's all about building resilience. And it's not just looking at physical resilience, like how do you build like resilience, like through biohacking techniques, like on a physical sense and building a strong immune system. But it's also about social and psychological resilience in many ways. And to me, that's very interesting. Like understanding, like as much as you are dissecting your day and your daily routines and how to do things more optimally, maybe you can also like dissect your mindset. Like one person who has become very popular in the last few years is Jordan Peterson, because his work is very much founded on the 5-factor model of like personality types, and looking at the weaknesses of men or women today, like what are the characteristics that you may want to build in yourself. So one thing that personally I'm interested in is Stoic philosophy. So life is suffering, but in the end, like you better enjoy it in a sense. So in Stoic philosophy, it's all about building virtues. Like everyone is like challenged. Like you can be a world leader. It's a pretty tough spot to be in. Or you can be a homeless person. That's also a very tough spot to be in. Like both of them have a tough life. They're in different things. But as long as you have some freedom to choose how you develop or respond to certain situations, you are free. And one of the ideas of Stoic philosophy is to build virtues and principles that and character, that no matter what, you have like some principles that you keep in high regard. Those could be anything like bravery or honesty or like trustworthiness or whatever noble things you can like have there. That's kind of like the core of I would say a lot of the Western philosophy, and I would say also those things you can find in the Eastern philosophies as well. So I'm a big fan of samurai traditions, for example. the same thing there: body mind connection, nature connection, virtues, and like some basically like self-respect in a sense. And I think a lot of things that people do nowadays is driven by not respecting themselves at all. Like it's just like neglect of themselves. And to learn to love yourself is a cliche, right? Mm-hmm. But one reason why you develop yourself physically, mentally, and your character especially, because there is a lot of in, like, I would maybe say that it's like there is a lack of authenticity in this world. Like people are like, they have all kinds of facades and all kinds of insecurities that they mask with narcissistic aspects or tendencies. Like they're afraid to be themselves because they have this pressure from the outside to be something else. And often that's an internal driving force that is driving all that. So what I speak about a lot when I look at the dark side of biohacking is the question of why are you trying to optimize yourself? Like, why are you trying to be a well-functioning, like, why do you want to be a superhuman? Like, is this also all for like some kind of personal gratification, like some type of masturbation that you engage yourself in? Like this need to feel good enough? Is it that? Like, is it because you like what you see in the mirror?
Or is it not what you like to see in the mirror? Maybe it's coming from a place of a void at childhood,
exactly,
that they feel is actually missing in their life. And so in order to fill themselves up, they have to constantly try and better themselves and do these things.
This is exactly right. So often when we attribute achievement or mastery to certain individuals who are the, you know, freaks in the freak show, in a sense, they often feel empty inside. They don't feel enough. And this is the reason why they are, you know, the caricatures they are. And there is this term imposter syndrome, which describes this beautifully. What an imposter syndrome is someone who, even though they are already successful, they are not happy about, you know, that they feel they need something else, they need more. So it's this like deep void and emptiness that they feel even when achieving things. And then there is the whole imposter aspect, in a sense that you try to be someone else that you are not. And it's almost like encouraged in our culture. Like if you think of social media influencers, if you think of startup companies that need to show like certain aspects, like it, to me, it like everyone is imitating something else. It's all imitation. They try to imitate mastery. Everyone tries to be Elon Musk or Kardashians or whatnot, failing at it. Some of them, you know, they do reach that level, but there's so many like influencers who end up, you know, in depression. Think of like musical artists or any kind of people who are in the center of attention. Are they happy about all that attention? No. Very, very rarely. Like they hate it to a certain extent, but they can't help it because they feed on it. That's like it becomes their identity. Their success is relying on the popularity, but at the same time they hate that popularity in a sense. People recognize them on the street, they, you know, harass them, you know, but it's not all that. It's actually the pressure that builds up inside to be what the audience expects you to be. So if you're Lady Gaga, everyone expects you to be Lady Gaga all the time. If you're Mr. Beans, everyone expects you to be Mr. Beans and funny all the time. So it's this like pressure that builds up, and often it's the expectations that you have to yourself that you need to be this. And it's all an illusion. Like you can snap out of it any second. So some people do, some people don't. And unfortunately, the way I see it, there is like some malevolent and dark aspects to this that anyone can figure out by doing something like a dark factor personality type test. So darkfactor.org. You can check out like how you score on narcissistic traits or sadistic traits or psychopathic traits or I mean, there is like multiple different
Oh
dimensions
wow,
to.
I'm going to check that out, definitely.
Yeah, I did that test and I was like utterly like worried what's going to be the result. um, and But the thing is that these things are spectrums, that everyone has these. Like these are human things. Like we all have capability for very self-centered, self-driven behaviors. We all have the capability of undermining others in order to achieve something ourselves. We all are capable of temporary psychotic episodes, even like in interpersonal relationships, when we feel hurt,
Yeah.
or even in war. Like if it's you or someone else, like you often save yourself first. It's we're all capable of these things in different situations. It's the awareness of some of these aspects that might be coping mechanisms or result of earlier trauma that you keep on repeating in your life. So if you find yourself constantly in similar dysfunctional relationships, or you find yourself like self-sabotaging yourself repeatedly, if you find yourself with addictions like soothing yourself, like with substance abuse or color television or video games, whatnot, like whatever your vice is, everyone has their own issues. Understanding that, recognizing the shadow, it's kind of like it's trendy to say that, yeah, I need to do some shadow work. Like there's this whole conscious community that's all about shadow work, but in the end, it's not about suppressing or trying to eliminate it, but like to recognize it and see, those things about yourself that you are afraid to look at. Because in the end, when you go in there, there's like absolutely nothing to be afraid of.
And what tools did helped you, just coming around, helped you with your looking at yourself, maybe looking at your shadow side? Because I know people use various different tools these days. People are trying mushrooms, psychedelics for the first time. Other people turn to meditation. So, there are various different tools. Are there things that you've used, Teemu?
So what is very interesting is that I take a little detour and I come back to answering your question precisely, is that the generation before us, they went to India, they went to, they discovered yoga and they discovered meditation. And there was also the hippie movement with psychedelics as well. Nowadays, it's not about going to India, really. It's about, it's about going to South America, drinking ayahuasca or like having mushrooms or something like this. Or it's about like going to some kind of neurofeedback session for some time. And like it's, to me, it's like shortcuts. Like it's a fast food culture we live in. We need quick solutions. You have depression, take this pill, right? So now the pill is mushrooms. It used to be like certain reuptake inhibitors, but hey, we have a better thing right now around the corner. You just take mushrooms once and you're healed. No, you're not. Absolutely not. It's like one ceremony is not going to do it. It has tremendous potential of neurogenesis. Like if you are depressed, anxious, you have like all kinds of issues. It's very much possible there's a like a physical damage that has accumulated and occurred in your life, maybe from starting from childhood trauma up until today. The obsessive compulsive behaviors, they do manifest more in people who are have like systemic inflammation and like this feeling of unease. is often there is a physiological component to it, but there is a psychological component to it as well. So you have to address both. Like if it's your psychology that leads you to detrimental behaviors that damage the system, let's say it's alcoholism, you have to also start from the mind. It's not just a physiological thing. So you are the one who is like getting into those loops, and you are the one who can get out of it. So it's important that you work on the psychology simultaneously, but I believe that the physiological side is important as well. So what biohacking can do, like addressing your nutritional deficiencies, addressing inflammation, addressing gut issues, it makes it so much easier to fix brain-related, cognitive or psychological issues. Now, it turns out they are discovering that, gut microbiome is linked to depression, for example. But I don't think it's a good question. Is it a causation, or is it is there correlation or causation here, right? So I think it's like homeostasis in humans, which is the equilibrium, the balance of the biological organism in medical terms. The homeostatic side of things, it's a multi-variable thing. It's not like there is one single thing. It's like it's enough sleep, it's stress management, it's social relationships, it is nutrition, it is also like a lot of things, internal and external, that can contribute to your sense of well-being, that can help you to reach like some kind of like state that some people might describe as happiness. But in the end, we need also moments of difficulty, moments of struggle. Like we need ups and downs, and so that's why you might challenge yourself. And in the end, like that can be balanced, or it can be like completely out of balance, right? So it can be like to the extremes, like it can be manic depressive episodes, or it can be, more fine-tuned. But in the end, no one is happy if you're like just better, faster, stronger, succeeding all the time. The stronger the light, the deeper the shadow, the higher you fly, the more there is to lose. It's like Icarus going too close to the sun and the wings will burn. So that's what I see with a lot of mastery, is like, in the end, if you look into the Eastern philosophies, what do? They encourage you to sit alone without, material possessions in a cave, in a sense. So it's a lot of it is like, it's not more, it's not abundance. It's not manifesting your dream life. It's the opposite. It's basically like it's not the addition of something. It's the removal of stimuli. It's the removal of possessions. It's the removal of everything until you are actually face to face with the essence. And maybe even depriving yourself of light, like in a vipassana, for example, or speech, that you don't talk. So from these kind of states, we often tend to actually realize something super important and meaningful, and it creates kind of like this. I don't know if it's dualistic, but it shows you the other side of the coin. And often that's where people find happiness for some reason. Like it's not from wealth, from riches, from abundance, of like success, of recognition. It can be that, but it gets boring at some point. So what did the guys do in the 60s? What did Beatles do? They went to India. So what do people like successful Silicon Valley entrepreneurs do now? They go to the jungle. So it's this like intuitive feeling that the answer is somewhere in the opposite. It's like we have this like Western highly developed culture And what is people void right now is some kind of spirit, some kind of like consciousness, some kind of like awareness. So where do we seek that? There's this like whole like Burning Man now going on. Like there's like
Yeah.
this like this conscious community, like like people with like feathers in their hats. Yeah, I mean Terence McKenna described it as archaic revival. As we progress and we develop things, um, the emptiness that we have, like the further back in history we have to go to discover what we lost. And that's why we go now. That's why we celebrate indigenous people and their ways, and we are interested in rewilding and grounding and reconnecting with nature. And there's this whole organic whatever movement of things, and environmentalism even. Like we try to connect to something which is not an industrialized mass culture, mass produced like consumer mania. We want to seek the opposite. Even though we celebrate all the influencers with millions of followers, maybe we want to find some authenticity somewhere where there is like no followers, like there is like something to be discovered. So like the Christopher Columbuses of our time, maybe they are not like seeking new lands, like but maybe they are like seeking something in their minds that they have lost. And to me that's kind of like it, to recognize that even our mass media consumer mania, that like one of the like culminations of that is social media, is that we need to detox from that stuff. Like we take a break from social media, we take a break from Instagram. We recognize the addictions that they bring along. We get sick of influencers. We get sick of memes and someone trying to like hook me up on a landing page or some kind of like funnel somewhere. And subscribe, please subscribe, follow us. Like it's like everyone is like feeding on everyone else's attention. So it's an attention economy. And what is precious is your time. Like you don't get that back, and you don't get your attention back either. And then we are surprised that we have like this like systemic depression in the whole system, and people are like actually not very happy and lonely. Although we had this technology that was supposed to connect us all, we feel more lonely than ever. Even someone who has millions of followers feels like super lonely.
Completely, because they're not present in true life.
No.
Teemu, this has been
Yeah.
such an interesting conversation. I just sort of wrapping up, where do you see the future for this industry, for the biohacking industry? Where do you see it going?
Yeah. So, I mean, these things go in cycles. So what we try to facilitate now is awareness to these kind of topics and aspects, that like this is kind of part of the shadow of it all. And the events that we organized last year in Amsterdam, the topic was hacking the ego. So that was a lot about that, like psychology and like ego in a sense, the facades that you build. Now this year in Amsterdam, the topic is expanding consciousness in all its modalities. It's like this increased awareness. So it's not only about expanding your consciousness with, let's say, plant medicines and psychedelics, but it's this expanded awareness of our role here, in a sense, also in context to nature and the environment. But humans have like through centuries pushed the boundaries of our state of being. So I think like the most ultimate biohacking masters are not the ones who live right now, but they're already dead. So people like Bruce Lee or like some like yogis, so or samurais, who really like put dedication into their craft. So in Amsterdam we have a 16th generation samurai, one of the last samurais, he's there because he wants to pass on that knowledge and philosophy to the next generation. He feels there is something important there that he grew up with, you know, in a family of samurais. We have some of the indigenous people, like the curanderos from South America, from different tribes joining. So I think it's important to have this kind of conversation, and recognizing that biohacking ultimately is some tools that can help you, you know, become more aware and expand your consciousness. Because in the end, every time you go to an ice bath, you're playing around with that a little bit. Like if you think of like a Shaolin monk, and what do? They do biohacking pretty much. Like they perfect the body, the movement, you know, they do all kinds of crazy feats. And where do things like Wim Hof method come from? The breathing technique. It comes from Tummo breathing. So it comes from actually Zen Buddhists who did that like breathing technique while they were immersed in a river in the mountains to be able to do that. And by the way, the way they did it, they had a wet towel around their necks, and they would breathe in a cold river until the towel was dry.
Oh my gosh.
Try to do that. It's pretty crazy. So, wow. Or don't do this at home. Like it's only for professional like Shaolin monks. But anyway, what it points to is that there is immense capability in human beings to overcome like even the hardest adversaries. And we have to be aware of that our species, in a sense, is becoming weaker because of like modern lifestyle. It's become too easy, you know. Everything is spoon fed to the new generation. It's what it is. So maybe this is all about also like preserving what is human is actually to struggle for survival. And the fact that we don't need to struggle for survival, or our survival is about social cohesion and who has the most followers on Instagram, like, yeah, go for it. But it's not necessarily, you know, those virtues that we really want. So this awareness that we can use these tools and technologies then to open up the mind, in a sense, because why did yogis do yoga? It was not an exercise. It was a way of preparing the body to sit in meditation. So I see biohacking the same way. Why do you do all these things? Why do you optimize yourself, like physically, mentally, biologically, biochemically? For what reason, bro? Like, are you doing this to contribute something important to, you know, as a legacy? Hopefully, potentially, like you leave something important behind, and you use that added capability for something good.
What do you want to be remembered for?
Personally, the way I see now that I live, I'm alive, I hope at least, is that I won't be remembered for the same things like 10 years from now. Like I've been kind of keeping on evolving in that sense. That's my pattern, in a sense. Like I'm not someone who needs statues to be built, but I hope that my work will show in others. Like I don't need the, you know, I don't need the name or like recognition in that sense. It's not about me. Like what I'm doing with the handbooks, the books that I write, or the events that I organize is to facilitate a community of people, and hopefully they will emerge and do something great together, because I think it's more of a collective need to, like, just if you take health, our healthcare system has not served us very well. It has been a reactive healthcare system. Its leaders don't look very healthy. Our interventions, although miracles have happened, and Western medicine has really been one of the cornerstones of like increasing our lifespans. It doesn't necessarily, even though it might help us live longer, it doesn't necessarily help us live happier or more content. to our bodies and to our minds. So I think it's about time that we take a more holistic approach. And biohacking is a preventive healthcare system in a sense. It helps you to prevent problems before they happen in its ideal state. And we all die trying. So at least I will be remembered as someone who died trying. It's like my aim is not to live forever. My aim is to do something useful.
Final question. What age would you like to live till?
I don't know. I'm 41 now. Like some people think I look like in my 20s.
I thought I looked young, but you look very young.
Yeah. So like I did look older 10 years ago. So I kind of see, the results of 10 years doing things like a bit differently than before. Like I don't know if I need to have like a specific date. It would be cool to live as a centurion, obviously, like what is like the physiological limit right now that we believe is, maybe go beyond that. Hopefully that's possible. But in the end, it's not about time. It's about, I think like I want to maximize the amount that I spend in a flow state. So like the less I'm aware of the stress and the busyness of my day, like the more happy I am, the more I have time to watch flowers bloom and bunnies hop around and like think about, how to cook even a better meal next time. Like that, I think the better my life will be. And the more it's about, to-do lists and schedules, the more problematic it is. But in the end, it's the fine balance between these two things that I hope I will like discover at some point, and to get meaningful things done with interesting people, and feel a sense of meaning from the things that we do. And community, I think, is what people need, and I try to facilitate that side, at least through the different experiences that we do. So one thing that we do is the Bikers Retreat, which is a smaller group of people. We done now this is the 4th edition now in Estonia in mid-September, but like smaller gatherings of people, more focused quality time together. Like that's what I enjoy personally, at least. So
and we'll put the links definitely in the show notes to that and the biohacking conferences as well, so people can get the links and come and see you, Teemu. Teemu, I love this conversation. I'm hoping to see you in London in a couple of weeks' time. I'll come up to you and say hello. But I just wanted to say I really enjoyed this. I felt like you were in flow, and thank you so much. Thank you for tuning into the show. Please subscribe and share. That would really help me get these valuable messages out.